Well, hi again. I am here to talk about my Lotus Emira. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've actually had this car a year. In that time, we've done quite a few things. We actually took it on a monster road trip from Utah to the Sierra Nevada mountains, ended in a track day at Sonoma. You may have seen that piece. I've done another local track day here. I've also done a lot of other road trips. The tally is just over 7,000 miles on this in year one, which I'm pretty proud of considering all the various cars we drive for the show. I'm aware of the fact that's not a ton of miles for a daily, but I don't commute every day, and we drive a lot of other things. I've dedicated myself to taking this on as many occasions as I can to just drive it. So how has it been? Because of course, it's a Lotus and you're already typing lots of trouble, usually serious, or any other Lotus joke because everybody assumes and says and has bombarded us with comments about that can't possibly be reliable.
Great cars, great roads, and all the reasons we love to drive.
Road trips, comparisons, test drives, and podcasts. This is Everyday Driver.
Wouldn't you know it? In the middle of our Sierra trip, it failed on me. It wouldn't start the second morning. Now, it had been really hot. Maybe it was vapor lock. Who knows what the story was. But we took it to a Lotus dealer in the San Francisco area. They gave it many software updates because there's constant updates on modern cars of all kinds. That was about 1,500 miles into my ownership. And since then, that no starting issue has never happened again. Now, huge issue. Some of you were like, you have to lemon law the car. It happened once. They provided a fix. It never happened again. There's actually been very few other issues. In fact, 2 others total in my ownership, and both minor. One is when I start the car after not driving it for a while, even if it's on the battery tender charger, I pull it off the charger and I start it up and it says limited telematics, see manual. Well, the telematics is all the stuff where the car talks to the mothership. It's all the GPS. If the car actually gets updates over the air or talks to the manufacturer, telematics is how that happens. It's just a little indicator on the dash. You hit OK and nobody cares and the car drives fine. After you drive it, that goes away. Drive it the first time that day, start it back up, you'll never see that message again. And that is true. However, something in the latest Lotus Emira software update kills that problem. I cannot overstate how much any modern car you buy is dealing with constant software conversation, and very often that software just hiccups. I mean, this is what Tesla owners have dealt with since day one, but every manufacturer is actually having these kind of issues. I am not making an excuse that it's okay. It's not okay. But I am stating that it's not just Lotus. It's everybody. What about any other issues? Well, there's only been one other issue, and it was an oddball. In the middle of the winter, I needed to get gas. Pretty simple thing. Could not get the gas filler cap to pop open. Of course, once I took it in, guess what happened? They got it to pop right away. It had no problems. And they called me and said, no, it seems to be fine. Because of course they did. They filled it with gas. They closed the fuel filler lid, tried to reopen it, and it didn't work. And the result was they put on a new plunger. Of course, that was warranty work, wasn't in the shop very long. It's worked great every time since. So here we are, 1 year, 7,000 miles, road trips, track days, lots of daily use, and I have 3 issues total. Random non-starting issue, software, limited telematics, who cares, and software. I do need to get that updated when I take it in for the next oil change, and the fuel filler cap, which was replaced. I'm going to put all of those in the category of annoying more than problematic because they haven't been replicating. So besides those issues that maybe you tolerate, maybe you don't, how is this car? And it's brilliant. The reality is this car does an amazing job every time I'm in it. It feels like an event. I drive it enough that I kind of should have gotten over it. I don't mean that to sound weird, but when you drive a car regularly, the craziness of it kind of fades and it becomes just car. And I have moments when I'm commuting where it is kind of car. But I am so impressed with how this thing drives and the fact that it is in my garage. I simply cannot believe it. This is a $100,000 car, which is far more expensive than anything I thought I'd own. From my perspective, this may as well be a 7-figure hypercar. This is so upper echelon of anything I thought I would actually get to drive daily and call my own. There is no above this, because I like the lightweight of this, 3,200 pounds, manual transmission, rear wheel drive. It is an involving car. for the driver. The next thing I can find that does all of that is the Gordon Murray T33 at about $3 million. Between here and there, there's nothing I would even look twice at above this. Yes, Porsche makes some great products. Paul just bought a GT4 and it is brilliant. But this has a uniqueness and a specialness, I hate to say it, that most Porsches don't offer. The steering on this is interesting. The gearbox, I kind of have grown to love. It is a little different than the one in my Elise. It is a revised version of the one that was in the Evora. You can't rush it, which has been a reality of Lotus gearboxes for as long as I've worked with them. But it does feel great, and it is satisfying to work with, even if you can't see it working down there. I don't know how long I'll have this car. I am amazed to have had it at all. So with that year of ownership, let's talk about real-world usability on this car. It doesn't have back seats, but it has a surprisingly big shelf behind me here. There is a decent-sized trunk. It is not enormous, but it like big duffel bag sized. That'll fit perfectly in the back there. Now, it will get warm back there, but I have never taken a trip, even with my wife, where we couldn't fit everything we needed in this car. She packs a lot. The seats are still my biggest disappointment. They're fine. I don't want to mislead you and tell you that the seats are bad, because they're not. But it just gives you the impression you're sitting too high in the car. Now, the hip point, when we've gotten in this and the Evora back to back, the seating position's almost identical. It's just the seats in the Evora, especially the GT, were so much better in just hanging on to you that it felt like you were lower in the car. Now, our friend Greg at Greg's Race Parts will sell you the Tillet seat, and that is a carbon bucket that apparently revolutionizes the feel and gets toward what you're looking for. But the problem here is that is just a carbon bucket. These seats, the downside to them is created by the fact that they are memory and they are heated and they have tons of electric adjustment. I think about using this with my wife, who's significantly shorter than I am. We like having 2 memory seat buttons. It is helpful. If they offer a factory actual performance seat that has some of these electronic features, I would swap it out. The air conditioner and heating system, the heated seats, all of that works wonderfully. This car can stay very cold or very warm depending on the temperature. Visibility for daily use is excellent. Yes, there's a little bit of a blind spot over both shoulders, but compared to most sports cars, it's better than most I've been in. It looks unbelievable in every scenario. Every time I stop for gas, someone asks me a question about this car. But being the people that we are, when you drive a car for a while, you can't help yourself but think, what's next? You can't help but wonder, but is there something else out there that would be intriguing? And so I've thought about that a lot. And along the way, one of the things that's come up is the variant of this Lotus Emira, and that is the i4, the AMG Mercedes version, the one that has the 4-cylinder and the 8-speed DCT from AMG Mercedes put in the back instead of this Toyota-sourced V6 with the supercharger. It is an alternate choice, and I fully recognize it is an alternate choice. If you're going to go for the obvious choice, you're going to spend this amount of money, you're going to buy a Porsche. The Porsche is going to be very good. But I have wondered about that 4-cylinder. I have been curious since it was announced, since that is the alternative version, how is it going to drive? Originally, it was going to be the much more affordable version, but the way they're selling here in the US, they're within $5,000 to $10,000 of a V6 version. By the time that 4-cylinder came to the US, it had a power bump that makes it, on paper, more powerful than this car. So now that I'm reflecting on ownership with this car and looking for a whole nother year of incredible experience with it, should I have gotten the other engine? I mean, I like having the manual, and it's not offered with that engine. But I'm very curious to drive them both back to back and see, what about the i4? What about that Mercedes power plant?
Think about all the mid-range aspirational sports cars that offer different engine choices. At the very low end, like a Miata or a GR86, only one engine choice is offered. At the very high end, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Koenigseggs, Paganis, only one engine is offered. But everything else in the middle, Corvettes, different trim levels, Supra, Caymans, and this, the Emira. Everybody thought, me included, why would you spec a different engine, an additional engine that caused additional engineering, additional manufacturing processes? Why would you do that, Lotus? Choice.
I'm surprised how much has been affected by this engine change. Yes, we've gone from the Toyota-sourced V6 with a supercharger and a really good manual transmission to this AMG Mercedes 4-cylinder that AMG gets like 500 horsepower out of it when they want to, detuned here to the US spec of the first edition i4, which is 400 horsepower, 350 pound-feet of torque. That is more torque than the V6 gives you, and as a result, it does make this slightly quicker to 60, and it has 8 gears, which gives it a slightly higher top speed.
There's full throttle. That's impressive. That is quick. It's much louder. The turbo whoosh is in your face. It's in your head.
It is ever present in the cabin with you. Much more so than the V6, because you've got the turbo noises over your shoulder and this angry grumble. It's not a happy engine noise. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like a Golf R with an exhaust. Just a Volkswagen that used to be demure and now has this big, angry, grumbly exhaust on it. That's the way this sounds behind you. It doesn't seem or feel like an exotic car power plant. It does feel like a hot hatch sound. It does actually deliver power and sound like a hot hatch motor. But it doesn't take away the fact that this car is fast and very fun.
It's not a bad thing. And I think every enthusiast has dismissed this engine as not the one to get. But it's given the Emira a different character yet again. It has a sport-like sound and feel to me. And then we're off. Instant power. That's entertaining. I really like this Emira too.
Because it's a turbo, there's a wall of torque. There is a ton of power here, but also because it is a 2-liter turbo, it has very little nuance, very little personality in the upper half of the rev band. Half throttle and full throttle, the engine's doing about the same thing. There's no extra voice, there's no little bit more power. If you've got your foot most of the way to the floor, there's really no reason to go all the way to the floor because yes, you're already getting it all.
But they've done a great job giving it its own character. Because you don't want to just feel like this is the engine out of the Mercedes. As good as that car is, as much as we like it, we want it to have its own character, and it does. I'm also working the transmission more. I'm trying to tell myself it's not because I just want to hear the turbo whoosh, but I can't. Listen to that.
This is not the only way to get an automatic gearbox. You can get the V6 with an auto. Apparently. I don't know why you would, because this is a dual clutch that is excellent and it can be very fast, but that also means occasionally it drags a gear a little longer than you think is necessary. And sometimes under partial throttle, it'll bounce the whole car like someone learning to drive manual.
This brings us to the paddles on the steering wheel, and you're going to want to use them because that's the point of buying this car with the dual clutch. 8-speed dual clutch controlled by the paddles. It's also controlled by the lever here, which to me, inexplicably, is a left-right actuation.
I had heard about this, but it's weird to encounter it. So if you want to shift this with the lever yourself, it's a left-right motion. It should never be a left-right motion. That's utterly wrong. Luckily the paddles work, so we'll just use the paddles, but that's bizarre. Okay.
So you're going to want to use the paddles on the steering wheel. The problem is they barely move. It's the slightest motion, and I want more of a firm, positive click out of it. I want to feel like I'm engaging, like I'm really telling the transmission what to do, rather than just suggesting. But I'm using them constantly. I want that better feel because you're going to be using them so much. This is quick, and you know what? Quite possibly in the realm of what Cayman has done with the PDK. It's simply different, and it comes down to preference. And that's what Lotus has done with giving all of us enthusiasts choice. It's created a different car out of the same car. That's pretty cool. And that's worth the investment. That is worth the extra engineering and everything that went into building these.
Everyday Driver is brought to you by Vredestein Tires. Demand a better tire.
This V6 has a better sound than that 4-cylinder. It's grander. It's like it has more notes to work with. It's not grumbly, it's orchestral. And then the whoosh of the supercharger laid on top of it.
Superchargers have always had that wonderful rush of power. I really do appreciate it. Even though I love turbocharging and I love the torque, that inline 4 makes a lot more torque, 40 pound-feet more torque than this. I love the speed that it carries.
I am more in charge here. I'm more in control than I am in the 4-cylinder. And that doesn't mean that this is necessarily better than that. It's what kind of driving experience are you going for? This is a more old school car. This is a more analog car. I didn't expect how much I would feel that going from the 4 to the 6.
So you drive it differently than the inline 4. This one you really keep your speed. And I feel like it flows very well. That's why Lotus has used this Toyota engine for so many years. It's so well suited to this car. This also has the LSD in the rear, whereas the inline 4 has the ELSD. I really like the throttle application here. I really like what it forces you to do. It gets your eyes up the road and you roll onto the power. Listen to that rush. It doesn't snap to red line. It's quick, but it pushes you there.
This engine has different voices depending upon how much throttle you're giving it. And as you get higher and higher in the RPM, and depending upon how much you put your foot to the floor, the engine has different voices and different amounts of power that it spits out. This V6 whooshes where the 4-cylinder grumbles. What's your preference on engine sound? I like the jet fighter sound here much more so than the grumbly 4-cylinder.
Even though this is the slower car on paper, it certainly doesn't feel that way. I mean, they both make 400 horsepower, but I feel like my driving is much more smooth. It's much more controlled in this car. I really feel like I'm engaging with the core of the car with this engine and transmission.
You're earning the speed here. You actually have to kind of work with the car. The 4-cylinder just serves it all up at lightning speed. But these are both powerful. They're similarly quick, but the combination of the gearbox you have to be at one with, and the steering that's all hydraulic with more weight and better feel, makes this a slightly more involving car than the 4-cylinder. And I didn't expect all of those pieces to be affected by the engine change.
And the engine has power everywhere. It's not like you need to keep it in the high RPMs like most turbo engines to get the power, to get that feel out of it. It feels more like a proper supercar than an inline 4. And it really feels like smoother application of power through here. And it's kind of comes down to what you want to do with your Emira. I really feel like I'm driving this car and trying to feel where I can extract the most. And just using the throttle to steer through. Oh, yes.
It's amazing what happens when you drive cars back to back. The things we discover always astonish me. Something about having cars that seem similar on paper next to each other, right back to back, reveals so much. But the surprise I wasn't ready for is what it's done to the steering.
It feels weirdly smaller. And we've been debating, because of the different engineering, because of this different engine, it's required an entirely different subframe.
When they put this new engine in here, they had to do different things to the back half of the car, because the engine is actually sitting a little closer to the firewall and a little bit lower, and it is actually lighter in the 4-cylinder by 24 pounds, well, 26 pounds, somewhere in there. So the point is, not enough you're going to notice. What you are going to notice is the difference in the steering. This has an electro-hydraulic steering rack. It is not the same fully hydraulic one that you find in the V6, and that changes this car quite a bit. It darts in. I don't like the steering info as much, but you can't argue with the great precision and quick turn in here.
On the V6, that is a natural hydraulic system. Here, it's electro-hydraulic, meaning the pump operates on demand. The electro-hydraulic portion of it operates on demand, where it's hydraulic and engine driven on the V6. And here, it's a lighter steering feel. The front end feels lighter. The rack feels completely different. The way this drives feels like it's a smaller car with the center of gravity closer to the front of the car. Interestingly, the problem with this one is, I feel like the steering feel is more natural and better on the V6, whereas there's numbness that's introduced. There's a deadness to the steering. Didn't expect that.
The V6 has a little bit better steering feel. I'm not saying this is bad. This handles very well and the steering is excellent, but this feels like the electronic steering rack that Porsche is putting in their cars. In fact, that's what this is. This entire four-cylinder Emira feels like a Cayman to me. It feels like a 718 Turbo 4 Cayman. In sound, in delivery, in steering, it feels very close to that 718 Cayman. Now that is of course not a slight, because the 718 Cayman is a simply amazing car, but it's not as unique as the V6 Emira, and it doesn't actually separate this car from the Cayman very much. With the 2-liter turbo delivery of power, with the DCT, with the electronically helped steering, it feels like a Cayman. It feels like other things on the market you can buy. You just happen to buy the prettier one because you bought the Lotus.
I feel like I'm going as quickly as I was in the V6, but the wheel, I'm working the wheel far more. The car is so twitchy. It's upset more, I feel like, too. Now, this also has the sport suspension, whereas Todd's car has the touring suspension. And for all of these reasons, this feels like it's dancing on its toes, where Todd's V6 feels so planted. It's so satisfying on Todd's car. But you know what? It's entertaining on the 4-cylinder.
Jumping out of the other Emira into this one, the first thing I notice is the difference in steering feel. And that wasn't even the reason we brought it. That wasn't even the point of this review. The point of this discussion was supposed to be the differences in engines, and here I am, again, talking about steering feel. And you can absolutely tell when you jump from one to the other. This hydraulic steering rack has more weight and more feel.
This is a much more natural feel, the true hydraulic feel. It feels a bit heavier, and I think that's what we like about the hydraulic steering feel. And the feel on here is so good. It's so good.
I am more aware of the pavement with this steering rack. It's not just the manual. I thought it was just going to be the manual. We were going to have a discussion about a good dual clutch versus a manual, blah, 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 blah. We've all heard that discussion, and everybody has their sides and their factions and their reasons that they like one gearbox over another. And all of that is valid. That's fine here. You could argue that the 4-cylinder is faster. You'd have a case. But this V6 with the manual and the hydraulic steering is a more unique car to drive than the experience that the 4-cylinder offers. And that's the biggest surprise. I did not expect that. I still cannot honestly believe that I'm taking this car home and that I own this car.
It's an awesome car.
I am so excited about it, but I am genuinely surprised to put these together to discover how much variation there is. They look the same.
Yeah.
But I just, something about an engine change, I just expected it'll be the same car with a slightly different engine. There's more going on here than that.
They're very different, and I think every enthusiast is crapping on the inline 4 just because it isn't a manual, and there's the assumption that they will drive the same, and they do not drive the same. This is also very enjoyable in its own way, and I think enough of a change that it's a different car. They're two different cars. As I talked about, imagine all the cars. Think of all the cars that offer different engines and how they get different. The C8 Stingray to the Z06.
Sure. Yeah.
There's all these mid-range cars, and they offer different engines and trims to make them different.
Fundamentally, it's the same car. But I think you'd be surprised if you drove them back to back how different they are. Obviously, if you're going for an automatic, I said it already, you may as well get the DCT and don't get the V6 automatic. That is a fantastic gearbox.
The steering in these is different. Who knew that was going to happen?
It's a different car.
I'm quite surprised they are as different as they
Yeah.
are. I genuinely expected same car, different power output, and we'd all go home. I'm still going home happy.
You're still going home in that
and I'm
one.
still going home in this. I can't believe it, but
Yeah.
that is a unique car in its own right. I still prefer this though.
I prefer this too.
Do you?
But drive the inline 4. Drive it with an open mind, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
I think people are sleeping on that car.
Yeah. It feels so different than anything else that we drive. It feels like it's got such unique personality to me. It's so unique in and of itself, and it has that Lotus flavor. You're asking what about it is Lotus? Of course it's the chassis, of course it's the tuning, but it's the ability for Lotus to choose the parts that make it theirs, that make it have a different flavor. Still compelling, very competitive, interesting, and worth your dollars.
I could argue that the Emira 4-cylinder is a more modern car because it feels more like other modern cars. And maybe you prefer that. Maybe you like turbo power delivery. I prefer supercharger. I like naturally aspirated, but I see the merit in turbo, and there's a lot of power. There's more power. This does not feel like a Cayman. This feels like its own thing.